So welcome to today's session 2 workshop. Title is Wireless Application Development Fundamental Online Workshop. So hope you guys enjoy the workshop yesterday. So if you practice and you have any issue, you may leave your question at the chat box. Miss Loo, our instructor, will answer you later. Okay, so let's start the session 2 now. I will pass the session to Miss Loo.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Today we're going to look into what we have left yesterday. Now, some of us might have some problem in loading the Node.js, and I understood that there are a variety of different range of internet connection that we have over here. So for those who really have the very limited kind of connectivity, please don't fret, don't be afraid. I'm going to share to you, if you cannot see my shared screen, you can actually let me know. So I have shared my screen. This was yesterday's work, and I'm going to share to you another thing is this is an alternative, all right, to what we can have in our React Native itself. Okay, I would call it, we call it an export snack. So it is like a snack that you can have, all right, in real life, that you can actually try your codes and have the output at the same time. But okay, bear in mind that because this is a very free platform, that anyone can just type snack.export.io, and then you can just put your project into here, and then you load it at here. So which is why at times you will have this error saying that the device preview is at its capacity, that you need to queue up and in order for the output to be shown. But the concept is similar with the Node.js that we have, right? The export CLI that we have, which we can actually run it on the phone. So it is good if you have your export client installed on your phone itself. But if you do not, if you face problem, because some of us, we actually face problem in installing the export client as well. And some of us actually overcame it with the camera app. But if you cannot do so, then you might want to try this alternative platform later for the output itself. It is just that you need to try more times of trial, and then to refresh, and then to see whether you can actually load the output. All right. So before going to React Native, okay, let us go back to here. Now, we have left some of the concepts, all right, before I gave the summary yesterday. So why we want to put email over here, the text input type, all right, if the input type is not text, is not text area, but it is email. No, now HTML5 actually allows a little bit of interaction. If we are to just put something like this, okay, when we click submit, okay, then we will realize that, oh, there is a message over here telling that the email address should have something that is important that an email address should have. So this is actually an interactivity that is provided by HTML5. When we use input type equals to email, it actually automatically check, all right, or validates what kind of input that the user actually put in. And if I put, let's say I put, and I end at the alias that was suggested just now. So I submit again, it will say that it is still incomplete, because after the alias, there should be something more following with a dot. So any of the valid email, it should have alias, then something after that, then .com or .edu or .net, something like that. So this is provided by the HTML5 itself. But let's say we would like to create our own customized interactivity with the user. All right, I believe that some of us might have tried the sample codes that are the sample scripts that I have provided in the files. Let me revisit it again. So for those of us who are wondering, okay, where did the files actually situated? Okay, I put it inside these files over here. So if you come to this page to join this meeting itself, you can actually, it is automatically by default, it is in the posts, and then you may want to go to files. So once you click and go to files, you will find the files that I've uploaded just for you. So if you want to access the files for session 1, okay, you will go to session 1 for the files. All right, and download the samples that I've uploaded over there, and also the slides as well. Now, in session 2 itself, I've shared the sample of the awesome app that we've created yesterday, and also today's slides. Now, coming back to our interactivity. Now, when we talk about interactivity, it involves more than just scripting some text or markup language itself. It will actually go far beyond that line, because we need something that is similar to programming language, which allows us to ask the browser to do something customizable to what we prefer. So there comes JavaScript. Now, why do I say at the very beginning of this session 1, saying that JavaScript that we are going to learn, it might not be Java in the end? Because now JavaScript language, it talks words like Java, but it is very the ownership. Okay, the ownership of the file. Okay, so we need to change the ownership of the file so that you all can actually access the file. Okay, later I will look into that. Now, Java and JavaScript itself, if we are to look, it is based on a very similar language, but JavaScript will use it in a sense that basing on that language itself, I come out as a slang. So when we are saying that someone is talking English with a very Malaysian way, we are saying that it is a Manglish. So Manglish is based on English itself, but it has a different rule upon it because we mix and match our own preference, all right, on top of the base of English language itself. So here comes the same concept. JavaScript itself is based on Java language at the very base itself, but JavaScript add its own rule on top of it, and it doesn't need any of the intermediate person to actually wrap this gift for us. So we can actually deliver it on a HTML file itself. So when we look into Java, you are developing it using the Sun Microsystems, or more so, now it is being taken by Adobe. So you need to download the environment, the platform, the software from Adobe itself in order for you to run Java codes. But for JavaScript, no, you can just put it inside your HTML files itself. Now, how do we actually put it inside our HTML file? Now, let's say we want to create a CSS, all right, a CSS language or script inside our HTML file itself. We put style, right? So for JavaScript, HTML says that, okay, if you want me to take out the book of JavaScript and translate your JavaScript from there, then you should have the tag of script. So this script actually, it is put inside the body itself. It can be put in head as well, like how we put it in style. But some of us, we might prefer to separate those two so that we can see, oh, all right, the CSS is on top and then the JavaScript is at the bottom. So let us try some of the interactivity and look into JavaScript more detailedly so that we can actually have a first-hand experience before we move into React.js itself, which is on top of JavaScript. It adds a little bit more rule using React itself. All right, so I hope that all of us, we have our Visual Studio Code opened, and we are on the page of our Contact Us. Now, if you have tried to open up the exercises zip file, all right, you try to extract them, then you can actually see that there is more it has more sophisticated kind of appearance, okay, from what we have done. So I might not be able to cover all of that in the samples, but I believe that the basic is enough for you to see that, okay, you can actually interpret from there what the others or what the other CSS scripts are doing out there in the different exercises. Now, when we look into JavaScript itself, we say that we want to put into some more interaction. Let's say this contact.html, it is supposed to get input from the user, right? But because this is front end, we are not actually transferring it to the server side. Now, going to the server side itself is really a total different workshop that we can have for this, because it is going to be a large portion for us to learn. Now, just put our hands to touch on top or surface of it. We are going to look into just retrieving the input and putting them out to display it to the user again. So what we do is that we need to instruct the browser to do so. So if we are to instruct the browser to do so, we have to have something called function. So we are moving a little bit to programming language now. Now, before this, we are all about taggings, right? So let us just put our script over here. We say that we want to put the script in between the body department or compartment. So we want to have our script, all right, in between at the bottom, okay, before the body ends. Okay, so this is our script itself. If we want to actually retrieve something, I will call it a very, very simple kind of function name, all right? So I would say that now computer, now you have one task to do, and the task is called function in Java itself. So this is based on Java code or based on the Java language itself. Every function, it will be called a function itself and followed by the name that you're going to give that function. So what kind of task that your computer is going to do? I might want to call it a very simple name, which is my function. All right, so every function itself, it will end up with this brackets, open bracket and closing bracket. So we are not going to go into real deep kind of programming code. So we just want to lay our basic over here. We won't want to go into, okay, what kind of things that we're going to pass over here and what they do. So in a function itself, it contains instructions. So when the browser look into the function, the browser needs to know step by step. So what are the things that the browser need to do? The first thing, if we are going to collect or retrieve, okay, the answer from or the input from the user themselves, the first thing we need to let the browser know is that, okay, you are to collect the input from where. So this browser need to put that input inside a container. So if I'm to pass a a biscuit to you and say that, okay, you need to pass this biscuit to someone else, then you need to put this bit, you're not going to just float that biscuit around. You need to take it. All right, so you need a space to actually take that biscuit itself. Now, at the same kind of gesture, you need to ask your computer to save a space to put the input as residing at somewhere in your memory so that later you can put it on display when I ask you to do so. So this is what we call a variable. So someone asked, is this actually a variable? Yes. We are going to variable today. Variable means it can be anything. Okay, so variable, this word, all right, it means that X or A or B or C or D can be anything. So if we are saying that we are creating X variable, we are creating a space that to tell that the computer, okay, X is going to be anything that I want you to put into. It can be the biscuit that I pass to you. It can be the value that this user is going to give. So how do we actually take that input from the user itself? So we need to refer to the input that the user had actually put into the email input itself if we are to retrieve the email. So document dot get element by ID. As we have set the ID itself, sorry, this one is uppercase, and then this one is lowercase. Okay. So this one is readily provided by JavaScript itself. Right? It can be used as a function, a readed function inside JavaScript itself. If you say that document.get element by ID, by automatically it knows that it's going to find the ID. Which ID? The ID that you have set over here. So if I say that, okay, this ID, from this ID email itself, then I will pass the email over here. So it will actually go to look for the ID of email. Now, what to get from the ID of email? The values. So when we look into here, we're instructing our browser to actually take the value from email itself. Now, what if I want to get the message from text area as well? So that is where I need to set the ID for text area as well. And I need to determine what kind of name that I should name it after. So if our text area is taking message in, so maybe we can just put mess or message. So the same type of codes or script that you are going to put into is you're going to have another variable, which means you are going to allocate another, you are going to ask your computer to reserve another space. If you're going to use the same space, it actually can overlap. So if I pass biscuit to you and at the same time I ask your left hand to take the biscuit from me. So at the same time, after that, I say that, oh, use your left hand to take the phone from me. So what will you do? You would throw away the biscuit and then take the phone from me with your left hand, right? So we do not want that to happen. We want your left hand to take the biscuit and we want your right hand to have the phone, so that you can have both at the same time and you can present both at the same time. So the same manner you're going to try to ask your computer to do, which is you are going to assign another space for the computer to get a different value or to get a different input from the user. So if we are going to take a message, on the other hand, we can just change the value of the element ID to message. Then you will have your computer or your browser to take two values at the same time. So just make sure that you have declared your text area with the ID, and you have referred the right hand to actually take the second input from the user. Now, as what we have said, the JavaScript actually have a base on Java. So before this, we don't have this kind of thing, semicolon, all right? Other than CSS itself, but CSS itself, it ends before the curly braces, right? So this semicolon actually tells JavaScript that this is one line of code and this is one line of code. This is very similar to what we have in Java and C++ or C#. So it actually have that kind of pattern. We are going along that way, which is why I need all of us to visit this before we come to the React Native itself, and to understand what React Native is actually doing. Okay, now what to do with these two things at left hand and right hand? The computer might not be able to understand that, where it's heading and which is the next step that it has to do. So we need to tell the browser to do the next thing. When you have retrieved these two values, please display it in an alert. So in JavaScript itself, it has something that is predefined, which is it has automatic function, which allows any of the developers to use it for display or for doing different tasks. So we will use alert for now. All right, alert, what kind of alert? So just now we say that we have collected the first value in X, right? So if we want to display the first value, all right, we can actually put back the storage name or the variable name that we have named after. So here it says that I am going to pop up an alert and display the first value that you have collected with your left hand, which I call it as X. Then I might want to insert what are some kind of words that I wanted to display, okay, other than just the value that you have collected. So we enter it by having a plus, telling the browser that, okay, the next words or texts that you're going to display is going to be these words, all right? It has to be quote and unquote. Then after that, we want to display two values, right? So we want to plus again y in order for it to display the next value itself. Okay, that is in the right hand. So if you want to have wanted to have space, of course you can actually put a space over here. So this is what we learned, right? If we put space, then it has space. If we don't put space, then it doesn't have any space. So this is what you put inside is what you get. Now, having the script itself, yes, very nice. Up until here, you have the full instruction of what the browser have to do. But wait a minute. When is it called to do this my function? When is it asked to do this my function itself? So the computer doesn't know when to execute this actually. Right, it only receives that, oh, script, inside script we have a very detailed of 1 2 3 steps to do, but I'm not going to do it, right? If I'm going to do it, you need to tell me when to do it. So if we would like it to do when we trigger it, right, we need to have a trigger, which means we need to have to press something or do something to ask the browser to come to this stack of codes over here. So at this page itself, I will call it to do this function when it is on click of that submit. So I can actually put an on click over here stating that if I click the submit button, you are going to execute my function. So what we can do is that we put on click my function in our input type itself. So when we do this, we are actually saying that this is the main trigger. So when you actually save it, you may see that now in your contact us page itself, you don't just have this type of pop-up for the email input, but you have something more than that when you click submit itself. I saved, but it didn't. Okay, let me see. Refresh. Okay. Okay, so it has something to do with interaction with the user for your web page for now. Okay, we look into JavaScript itself because it is very near to what we're going to look into today in React Native. So in JavaScript itself, we know that it is more to Java now. It is more to a little bit of programming language. So bear in mind that we need to have some of the programming language basic then when we are talking about building any of the application that is fully usable for users. So it might get a little bit more difficult from now, right? But it still speaks the same pattern. You still go line by line. You still instruct, okay, in a very structured way. You still go top and then down. It won't go hair wired unless, okay, now you have a simple calls here and there. We have seen it in our CSS itself, where when we call a class, then it goes up back to the CSS scripting. And now we are actually looking into calling functions. All right. So before this, we look into the class over here. It calls class, then it has to go back to the CSS over here to look for the class itself. Now, when we code or when we script something called function or something to do, then it has to go back, it has to go jump into that function and then execute it, then goes back to your HTML file itself. It doesn't actually need to refresh itself in order to have that pop up of alert. All right, when you click submit, it actually interact with the user. So it didn't actually collect the input to put it into a server and then from the server itself retrieve it back. So this is for JavaScript, and this is why some of us might say that, okay, it is a front end. If some of us have ever reached or hear this kind of term, because it is a front end because it is just, it doesn't relate or it doesn't go to the server in order to collect any data back. Now, when we talk about collecting data, I would like to bring us a little bit more into this section of collecting and also putting things into something like a server or saving data itself, and then how it is being retrieved back. Because in some of the script that you're going to see, it is going to look just like what we see on the Ajax itself. Ajax is actually a synchronous JavaScript for XML. It is a total different kind of application if we are to look into the development of the web itself. It actually talks more on exchanging data, more on retrieving data and display it to the user. So for this section of this session of workshop itself, I would just show it on my own workstation, because I do not want all of us to go through the hassle to install server and to set up server yourself. Now, what this Ajax actually do is that it is very similar to what we want to do with SQL Server. So some of us, this might be a very big term for you. What is SQL Server? So it is something like you don't have now. What we have done over here, it is just over here in our monitor. It doesn't. It all these values didn't save at somewhere else. It is just your browser. So once you refresh your browser, you don't have the same pop-up anymore, unless you insert again the input and submit again. So what if we want to save this input inside a storage, and then when we submit again, it collects back from the storage? So this is a different kind of part of the web already, right? It is not just involving on your screen itself or on your browser itself anymore. It involves more than your browser. It needs a storage now. So if we are saying that we need a storage, or we need something called a database, then you need a physical or a virtual environment or platform to actually have your database. For your computer itself, it is called a hard disk drive. So your hard disk actually stores or actually save things that should be retrieved by you just on a double click itself. If we are talking about web, if we are talking about wireless application or the apps that you have on your mobile phone itself, we are calling it a database. So MySQL or SQL database, they are just like Windows, iOS. All right, they are different platforms. Some they use Maria database. Some they actually use SQL database. So the more known ways are the SQL database, which is why most of us might have talked about SQL database itself rather than the other databases that are available. Do not worry about the database itself, what kind of server that you're going to set up, because I'm not going to ask any one of us to actually set up a server, but I want all of us to just look into the kind of interaction or the kind of JavaScript that it can actually goes into when it need to process things more than just retrieve one input and then display it on your browser itself. So I've started my local host using the my local server itself. So what I will do is that I will execute the exercise 4 that I have. This is the same file that you have for your exercise 4 if you have downloaded the zip file. So you might not be able to execute this on your own computer if you do not have the server, but do not worry about executing it. What I want all of us to know is that the coding itself, not so much on whether you can execute it and bring it to output on your own computer or not. But of course, if you have a server on your own computer, then of course you can put this folder of exercise 4 into your server itself and launch it there. Now, what this page is going to do is that when I click the get author, it will actually get from a sort of database file and then put the author on display. So when I click on this, it have to display all the different things that I ask the browser to do with the server itself. Now, when we look into this, it actually have a different kind of interaction rather than this. Now, just now we have to input something. Then, only then it actually display to us. at this point of time, we do not need to actually input anything because this browser itself is not getting the input from the users in order to display it out. It is displaying this data from somewhere else. So what we will do is that, okay, I will open up the folder of exercise 4 that I have shared with you. So let me see. Okay, now this input itself, if you have exercise 4 folder with you, you will have this different files that I've put in: the index, the contact as usual, the image one as usual, but there are 2 more, which are the author info and also the Ajax info. This one is just for trial. It's okay. This one is under XML, which is why it is called Ajax. It is asynchronous data exchange for XML file itself. So if I am going to see what is inside this author info, now, this is what it displays, right? The John Linus and then the email and then the address itself. So where does this come from? It comes from this file itself. This is a simple kind of database, quote and unquote database file that we can actually make up, all right, to just do a very simple way of retrieving input from somewhere else and then show it on a web. So when we look into this, at the same time, we don't have to refresh our page, and at the same time, it is retrieving this info to be put into here, the web page itself. So these are the different lines of data that is being displayed at here. Now, in XML itself, it used the same. So when we look into web application or wireless application itself, we can see that they have the same parent language. The concept is the same. But XML itself, it changed a little bit kind of roles, because in XML, you can use your own reference tag. So in XML itself, when we see this, it is not in our library of HTML. It is not in the library of JavaScript. It is in the library of our own self. We determine it by ourselves. So we say that, oh, we want to name this as author team. We want to name the next one as author. So it is like a variable name at this point. So our XML file is using all the variable names as the tag itself and put them in the tag form using the HTML rules of how the data should be arranged. But when we look into the pattern itself, it is the same. So which is why I need all of us to look into the different kind of scriptings. And what you need to look into is not really detailedly, okay, what should I put into the author team itself? Can I put author team? Can I put author city? Or can I put authors? And then can I put author after that? It is not this detail that I want all of us to look into, but the very basic of how you can actually put the scripts in the arrangement or in the structure that it has to, okay, for the HTML, for the CSS, for the JavaScript itself. More on the JavaScript and the CSS. Now, when we look into this, we know that, oh, it is collected from author. It is correctly taking from author one by one. All right, so this author itself is dwelling on the same row, and this author itself is dwelling on the same row, and it is correctly arranged into email columns for email, and it is correctly arranged into address column for address. So how can we do that? When we look into the file of here, it is inside our index, right? So let us open this. And then let us see this part. So this is the script that we have now. The same kind of trigger. On click, then we trigger the function to do something. And for the function to do something, we put it into the script itself. And this script, it involves a little bit on connection now, because you need it to somewhat connect to the server and retrieve it from a file. So which is why you have a HTTP request, you have the open of a connection, using what kind of connections, and then you need to send the request. And upon the response from sending, you get the data from there. You ask the computer to get the or collect or retrieve the data from there. So here is where some of the coding that you might need to know about. Okay, just now we have looked into putting variable, initiating variables, okay, naming your left hand, naming your right hand, naming any of the storage that you want your computer to get ready to put something on it, and then so that later when you call this storage itself, it can actually display whichever that you intended it to be. Now we are getting into the world of traversing and then repeating the same step. So when we look into this programming code itself, this is getting into programming code itself already, which is why I need to change it to now coding instead of scripting. Now, this is very based on programming language itself. It has its default function, which is if you call a for, all right, you will actually ask it to repeat. Okay, you will actually ask it to repetitively do something. So for there is a variable over here, you say that I is equal to 0. So initially it is 0 times. So how many times should it actually go through the same process again? This is how you want to state it. All right. For initially, you have not done anything. Then now you have to look through how many data are there. If the data length, okay, if there are 2 authors, then you will execute 2 times. So 0, 1. The length is 2, right? So it will end at 2. It will not do anything more than 2 times. So what if you put this as 1? Then you would need to put this as smaller or equals to. So this involve a little bit on mathematics over here. All right. So what is this I++? So you are actually instructing your computer saying that, okay, initially you do it, you haven't do it. I instruct you to do it as many times as how many authors are there. And then the increase of how many times is determined by this. So if you have done it 1 time, I will increase by 1. So that I will not increase by 2, increase by 3, increase by 4. So you determine the rule for the computer to do anything that it should. Right? So in this itself, you are actually saying that the table will increase how many row, how many columns, all right, or cells, because you are going to repeat this for. This file itself is repeating 2 times because there are 2 authors. All right. So this is actually what we can have a look on the coding itself, because at some point you're going to look into repeating statements like this for, okay, some of the statements that you might come across, it is in different arrangements, but they will mean the same, like while, okay, like do how many times while it haven't reached that the end yet, that kind of thing. So I do not want all of us to be overwhelmed by all of this. I want all of us to just have a visit and have a surface touch on how the codings or how the scriptings is going to go as far. All right, when we look into this, when we actually understand the basic of it, later you will not be overwhelmed by React Native itself. All right, so up until here, is there any of us that have any questions? Where do I find the file? Okay. On is download from team and extract. Okay, done. Why can't I open the JavaScript file? Okay, now we are going to look into opening the JavaScript file. We are going to look into how we are going to run our React Native itself. Okay, because I have just moved on to finish the Ajax itself. So it is supposed to continue with the Node.js. So, okay, let us go to our Visual Studio Code. Okay, I need to find my cursor. Okay. We're going to close all the folders, and we are going to open up the folder that we have done for our awesome app itself. So if you still remember where you place it, okay. Before this, we created our awesome app in our user's name. Okay, then if you search, you will have your awesome app over here. For those who have done the export init awesome app, all right, the initialization of that new project itself. So most of us have actually scanned with our mobile phone yesterday, and most of us asked, is it the correct kind of output that I should have on the mobile screen itself? Open up your app.js to work on your project. Okay, so when you open this folder, okay, when you select the awesome app folder, and then you click on select folder on your Visual Studio Code, let us have some quiz over here. It will actually automatically open up your app.js. If it doesn't, okay, click on the app.js, open it up. A simple quiz will be, which code in this app.js that looks similar to what you saw on your mobile phone yesterday? It is very easy to find. A little info overload, a little bit. Next time we'll have a longer workshop. Uh-huh. Text. Text? Okay. Return. Okay, some say text, some say it in the return. All right. So revisit what we have in session 1 before this. All right. We know that there is a basic pattern, all right, towards web application development. When we see that HTML, the very first page, it is going to display the home page. all right, which is called the index.html. So whatever we do on that index.html itself, it will actually turn up on our homepage or our first page of our website itself. So it will be the same as React Native as well. It will be the same rule. It is just that before this, we are talking about web page, websites. Now we are talking about the app and the screens. So the screens will be your web pages. The app will be your website. All right. So a little bit of exchanging of words and terms over here, but the concept is the same. Your app.js have 170 lines of codes, not just 21. All right. Okay. Now, if we are to look into the sample that I've given you, I'm not sure how many lines of codes over there, but the initial app.js that we have before you import the app.js from the files that I put inside your session 2 itself, okay, you will have this, the first page. So app.js will be your first screen, will always be your first screen. All right. When we look into app.js itself, it is like you are having your first home page itself. So this is what we are going to treat it as. Now, when we look into React Native itself, okay, let me open up the slides for you. When we say that we want to create an application, before we want to create an application itself, we need to have a plan. We need to set up what kind of view or what kind of screen that it should have. So similarly as what we did in our web page itself, the first one we need to imagine, okay, what is in the head and what is in the body? What should I do with the outline itself? Okay, so we outline the HTML first, then we outline the body, the head, and then slowly we move into the detail itself. So this was what we were trying to do, okay, all this while in our web page itself, and this is what we are going to do in our React Native app as well. So we're going to look into creating a simple calculator application. Right? We don't want to move too far so that you will not have that information overload. Now, even though it is a simple calculator application, it involves a little bit more on the coding, the scripting itself. So later we will look into it together. In this calculator application, we plan to have the first page, all right, which is the app.js. Okay, it will be, and it is a dynamic component. Okay, let's say we will just know that, okay, it will be a screen that will always change, all right, that will always receive input and change the contents themselves. So I will name it as the dynamic component. I will name it as the parent. So it is the parent that always stay there. So your homepage is always the parent. All right. So you expect the user to go back to your homepage, which is why you call it a parent. So it is a container of your whole application itself, or of your whole apps itself. Now, when we look into a calculator, we know that we will have buttons. We know that we will have views. Whether it is an output view or whether it is a history view, we are going to create it like we want the calculator to be like similar to what we have on Windows or iOS itself. When we display our calculator, we can actually have the history view of what we did before that. So these are static components which are children of the app.js itself. It is going to be something we call like CSS. It is going to stylize how it is going to look like, all right, on the app.js itself. So we call it as children of under the app.js or under the container itself. It is a small different department. So we are not calling it a head or body anymore. We are defining our different compartment or department by our own self. So at here, we need to have some imagination for our app that we need to develop or we want to develop itself, and put that imagination into vision if you can, because it is very, very important for us to be able to vision or envision the app that we want to build before we actually develop it. Now, this is going to be what we have for our app itself. Our history view, we will have a history view, and we will have output view in the center. All right, so history view will contain all the different numbers or figures or mathematics that we have done before this, and then the output view will be the very current mathematic formula that we have inserted. So here at the bottom we'll have the number buttons component. Be very, very, very alert or aware on this. Your app is going to be totally clean, right? It is like your HTML file. Before you put anything in, it is actually totally a clean white page. All right. It is by all the scripting itself, all these are being formed. So when we look into this setup plan itself, in order for us to have this compartment and this compartment over here and this compartment over here, they are all going to be by scriptings. So we're going to look into a lot of scripting over here, and we might not be able to cover all, because I do not want all of us to be overwhelmed by the very detailed codings out of the scripts. But what I want all of us to see is still the very fundamental, the very basic of how the arrangement, the structure, and how it comes about. So the first thing we need to know is the hierarchy or the project folder or the file path. Now, come back again to the file path. It is very important for us to set the file path. It is very important for us to set the project to have a certain structure. So in this project itself, instead of having the one folder style, okay, we have KLESF folder, and then in it we have index.html, we have contact.html, we have the image one together, mixed up together. So we might not want to mix them up together at this point of time for our app development. We want to create different folders. So the first thing that we are going to do is to have a folder named Src. And then in the root path, we will have our app.js, because app.js is going to be the first file that your React Native CLI or your export CLI is going to refer to project as the first screen. So it is going to be there. Right. Under the source file itself, you will have the different compartments. So remember, we want to create the compartment in such a way that we have history view, we have number buttons, and all of these, they will not come in place if we don't put scripts. So in order for us to view it even more clearly, even more clearly, then we need to have two different folders to actually know that, okay, this one belongs to the history view and this one belongs to the number buttons view, okay, or the number buttons or the customization of our number buttons. So how is it going to look like these buttons? All right, it is going to be determined by the number buttons kind of scriptings. So in the project hierarchy itself, we will see that, all right, in the default directory, we don't even have the Src folder. And then in the next one, we'll have the Src folder, we'll have history view folder, and under it, we have the index.js. Index is like, it is referring to the first web page, right? So it is actually using the similar kind of concept in wireless app as well. We name the very first page or the first source to be index.js. All right, rather than index.html, we are now looking into JavaScript. So all the files are to be in .js, okay, which actually refers to JavaScript file. Now, JavaScript file is not like our HTML file. When we open JavaScript file, we need to have a text editor. You can still open it with Notepad, but better if you are to open everything with Visual Studio Code by now. So inside history view itself, it has index.js, style.js. By the name itself, okay, we can actually roughly guess that this is the screen. This is the CSS or the styles that is going to stylize how the screen would look. All right, and then comes the number buttons compartment. Number buttons will have index.js and also styles.js as well. So this last styles.js, it actually is in the source folder or Src folder itself, but it is not within the number buttons or the history view. This styles.js is going to be used by app.js. So from here, all right, we are going to look into the components. Okay, what we have here, when I say that it is a dynamic component for app.js, it is going to be like the index.html, the first web page or the first screen we have here. So now let us look into app.js. Okay, some of us, we might have downloaded the zip file for your awesome app, right? You can actually copy and paste that that app.js and also the source into our files itself, into our awesome app itself. So if it says that, do you want to replace your app.js with these? Yes, you can actually replace that. All right. So all of us may do so and download. I'll try to download from here as well. So how many, is there any of us who have a problem of downloading the awesome app.zip and then we cannot extract it at one point? Are we all able to extract that? Okay, let me look into the replies. Downloads. Okay, if we have downloaded the zip over here, I will just put it into the awesome app. Okay, extract all, show extracted files when complete, extract. Okay, so when you have extracted all, you have the awesome app folder at here, right? You can go into the awesome app folder, just cut and paste into your project root folder. Okay, so if it asks you whether, okay, you want to replace the app.js or not, yes, replace the file in the destination. All right. Okay. So your awesome app folder that was extracted, it will be empty by now, and you can just delete these two. And of course, now your awesome app, it should actually by now have a different app.js. Is it 171? Yes. Oh yeah. Okay, so some of you have already replaced your app.js, then you should have your 170 lines of codes. Extract which file? I can't find it. If you okay. Which folder has all files like node modules? No. You don't need all the node modules and etc. Okay, you don't need to look into the node modules and etc. So you can just download the awesome app.zip over here. Okay, in the files section. Okay, download this awesome zip. Okay, just download this awesome zip. After you have downloaded this awesome app.zip, right, you will find the zip file in your download section, in your download folder. Then from the download folder, you can just extract it in your awesome app folder, all right, the folder that you've created your awesome app itself yesterday. So from here, you can actually replace some of the files like the app.js, and then you will put in the new folder, which is the Src, the source. Okay, let me move this back to the second screen. Okay, so I believe that Jin Zhang, all right, have put a very clear picture over in the chat box itself on where to look for the file, the awesome zip file. And Liang Han is posting every steps, all right, that you need to take for extracting the zip file and then replacing the file that you have in your awesome app itself. I only have 22 lines in app.js because you have not replaced it. You have not replaced your app.js with the app.js that we have in the zip file itself. Right, so Munyu has done it already. So for Huiyi and for Ahibot 07, okay. You may look into a little bit, scroll up the chat box a bit. Okay, you might need to look into what Jin Zhang has posted up. Okay, with the picture of where you can find the file. Okay, the files of awesome app.zip, and then download from there. Okay, using the steps that Liang Han has already uploaded. Right, you can actually extract the zip file and then replace the app.js with what we have in the zip file. Put the source folder into your awesome app root folder itself. So then you will have your root folder now having source, okay, and then having your app.js being replaced. You will have 170 lines. Now, before this, we have talked about why do we want to comment? Why do we want to put some of the green lines over in our codes, all right, or in our scriptings itself. And some of us, we might have noticed in your index.html, in your contact.html, whichever that you have put as comment itself, it is not going to appear on your website. But why do these actually need to be there and in the file itself? Now, some of us, we might be a developer, a long-time developer in the future, and we might have a lot of different developments from our own in our own ownership. So when it gets loaded, when we have a lot of apps under our hands, and in the middle of, or 5 years later, someone as our juniors came back to us and want to ask us about this app. The app that you would have developed 5 years ago, I was asked to actually enhance it. Do you have any of the things that you want me to take note of, or things like that? So if this junior is going to ask you like that, imagine if it is 5 years ago, and we don't actually have any comments or notes, all right, to remind us, oh, this app is about what, and it has a little bit of lacking in which sense and things like that, then it will really crack our mind to remind back, okay, what this app is for at the first place, and then what kind of things that I intended to do further for it again that I didn't do, all right, that kind of thing. So you can include that inside your coding or your scripting files itself, so that even if it is 10 years later down the line, when you revisit the file, then you can see that, oh, this section is referring to this, and you make a simple documentation over there. Okay, this app is generally for what, and then this app is going to be replaced by what, or you have some certain expectation that you have not realized yet with this app, which is why you want to remind yourself with the comments or with the notes. All right, so that kind of thing is what we are trying to do with comments. All right, to actually give a reminder, to actually put a note over there. All right, so some of us, we ask, okay, the extracted file, we do not need to rename anything. You just need to put it into copy and replace the file of app.js and paste it on into your awesome app. So when you paste it on your awesome app, when you open it with your Visual Studio Code, you're going to look at something like this, all right, in your app.js itself. So before we look into the overwhelming codes, all right, let us look into the output itself. So yesterday, we have looked into going for node.js, right? Okay, node.js command prompt. So if any one of us who have not installed correctly for this, do not be afraid, just wait a little while. Okay, you can go and open up Snack, export Snack, all right? You can try to look into export Snack. This is for those of us who don't have our node.js or our export CLI installed correctly, then you can actually go for export Snack. All right, this is a platform you can just insert the codes and then you can see the outputs, all right, on this platform itself, but you might need to wait a while. Okay, so at here, what did we do again, all right, for the node.js? We actually initialized our project, right? So after we export init, okay, this actually means that we want to initialize a new project. So when we export init, right, when you look into your project folder, it actually contains a lot more than app.js and also the Src, right? You have like all of these libraries like export, shared, assets, node modules. All of these are libraries to actually interpret what you will have for your app.js itself. So when we initialize a project, we are like initializing the whole package of libraries. We are actually putting the whole browser inside that folder itself, inside the project itself. So which is why when we export init, after that, we find out that our awesome app might be 40 MB or 60 MB, which is why I never copy the whole awesome app to you so that you can download from the MS Teams itself. It will actually waste all your data itself. So how do we access the project again? We need to cd or change directory, all right, to awesome app, right? Because this is the folder or this is the directory that we have created right after we initialize it with export. Okay, now export, if we are to look into export itself, export and React Native work hands by hands. Now export itself, it is an alternative platform for React Native, but export is actually using whichever React Native is actually using also. But export provide a little bit more alternatives than React Native itself. When we look into changing our directory into awesome app, right? How do we actually execute the project itself to see the output? All right, so this is where we want to put export start, right? So when you put export start, and by the time you press the button of enter, it will actually start to load the project using export CLI, which is export command line. All right, and then you will get to have this Metro bundler over here. Now, Metro bundler is one of the command line interface that export use, right, to actually bundle up what you have in your app.js itself and then put it on output. So what we want to do, or what we try to do, is that we will scan this code again with your mobile phone. All right, your mobile phone, be it using the export client or the camera app, you can scan it right away and you will see something like a calculator that you have seen in the slide itself. Okay, let me know if you cannot see any of the calculator in your mobile app itself. Okay, those who are struggling with the Node.js or struggling with the what do you call the export client itself, don't worry. This is what I am showing you over here. Now, export snack itself is powerful enough for you to put all your different codes, but be aware of the very basic of it: project folder or project hierarchy or structure of your files. Okay, the file path. So you will have your same file path over here, the app.js and also the source. Okay, take a look and realize that this is the same as what we have on the Visual Studio Code. And another thing is that the app.js will have the same as what we have, what I have provided, and the history view under it, index.js, styles.js, number buttons under it, index.js, styles.js, is going to be having the same data. So you need to copy and paste all of them. All right. This is just for those who have real problem with export clients and also the React Native export CLI itself. All right, this is the last platform that you might want to visit in order for you to see the output itself. So I'm going to use this platform to let us see the output itself. So this is our pre-project planning. All right, to have the history view over here, to have the output view over here, and to have the buttons over here. So what we have in our scripting actually reflects what we have planned. All right, and when we try to interact with it, okay, make sure that we can actually try to interact and it actually respond to the interaction, and it actually comes to the correct function. When we click clear, it should clear here, but it shall not clear here because this part is cleared by the clear history button over here. Now, when we try to delete, it will delete over here. All right, at this portion itself or this compartment itself, which is the output view. So some of you might be trying to play around with your phone itself. Okay, play around with it, and I will start to explain the scriptings, all right, 2 minutes after this. So we will just look into how and what we can do with this. Okay, it is a very simple function that we can have in a calculator itself. We can have calculations, and we can display all the different outputs in this output area, and we can display the history over here. We can clear history. Okay, we can clear history over here. Oops, it keeps on clicking the okay, so it can clear history over here. We can clear the output view over here. So this is the simple program that we can have for a mobile app itself. Okay, why there's nothing appeared after I scanned the code? Nothing appeared. Nothing appeared after I scanned the code. Scan the code again. Try to scan the QR. Try to okay, when you drag down the notification area, right, you will see that there is a refresh. There is a like a turning angle of arrow over there. You can refresh that. The app won't compile on my phone. Won't compile on my phone. Network response timeout. All right, if you have network response timeout, okay, make sure that okay, where's my cursor? Now, make sure you have your LAN, which is the LAN. Okay, here. Make sure you have your tunnel ready. Because if your phone and your computer is not using the same network, which means your phone is using Udo or Cellcom, and then your computer is using Unify, then you have to use tunnel. All right, and then scan again. If you are using the same internet connection for both of your device, then and only then you use LAN, the local area network. The local is for a strict connection, so we won't actually try that. Metro bundle. Okay, you do not need to run on Android, yeah, because we have not installed any of the Android device. You just need to use your phone, the Explore client in your phone to scan this QR code. Using the same source, still network response timeout. Network response timeout. Only got this. Already refreshed a few times. Yes. You will only have this. You will only have the QR code itself, but you scan it with your mobile phone. The export client in your mobile phone itself. That's what happened after scanning the QR code. That's what happened after scanning the QR code for Liang Han. After scanning the QR code, it cannot open in Android. If that is the case, okay, let's everyone open up your export snack. All right, those who are having problem, those who are having the errors and things like that on mobile phone only show a blank page with 3 circles overlapped. Wow. Okay. Okay, let us open our export snack. All right, turn on your web browser. Turn on your web browser, and then, okay, this one might not be easy because you might, okay, inactivity timeout. Okay, you might have to add file. Okay, add file and add folder by yourself. Okay, you cannot actually import the whole folder inside. How do I get back the QR code if I accidentally close the window with QR code? No usable data found. No usable data. Wow. So it's really different kind of circles overlap. Okay. Okay, some of us are okay though. Okay, never mind. You can actually open up the snack export. All right, but this will be a little bit of manual because you need to create. So you can actually, so this is the original export, snack export itself. All right, with the normal app.js we have here. So you might need to copy all these codes, right? All these app.js codes, okay, to the app.js. Okay, Control O, Control V. Okay, at first it will have error because you have not done any of the folders yet. Okay. Now, when we have this app.js ready, okay, we know that we have to have an Src folder, right? So source folder. We need to click on this icon, which is the folder itself, to plus the folder over here. It is a little bit same like your Visual Studio Code. All right, it is just that in Visual Studio Code itself, it goes according to our folders that we have in our windows, so we do not need to do this. All right, we can actually just copy and paste the whole folder into our physical folder itself, and it will be reviewed in our Visual Studio Code. But in Snack Export itself, because it is now on web, so we need to try to do everything manually. So I will start to look into the scriptings 435. Okay. Now, after having the source folder, you can actually create the styles.js. Just now we have the project hierarchy of styles.js. This is going to be the one that app.js refer to, right? So going back to your folder with source, and then you have your styles.js over here. Then copy and paste it into the snack export. Okay, our snack export styles.js. Okay, this will be the one that app.js relate to. Okay, now we have 2 folders under source, right? So one is history view. Now we are going to do this manually. No. Number buttons is not under history view, so we have to delete this. Delete this. It is still under source. Okay, so number buttons. right? So under history view, we have index.js, we have styles.js. So untitled file index.js, we have styles.js. So this is under history view, and also another two is under number buttons, right? So let us settle with the history view first. We are going to import what we have in the app, then Visual Studio. Okay, so history view, we have index.js. Okay, from the index.js, we're going to copy, and then we're going to paste here. All right, styles.js. We are going to copy again, and then we are going to paste here again. Okay, so this is all for history view. We have number buttons. Number buttons, we are going to have index.js again. Okay, we are going to create another file called styles.js again. Make sure it's in the okay, I've spelled it correctly, styles.js. So index.js, we are going to copy it again. Copy from VC to Snack Export. Yes, you can copy from VC to Snack Export itself. How to open on web? Okay, on your website itself, okay, on your Google Chrome or your Firefox itself, just open Snack Export, or just find Export Snack. All right. So when you found the Export Snack, just click on the link of snack.export.io for the Export Snack. All right, you will be given this page at first. Okay, so just copy what you have in your VC, Visual Studio Code, into the files that you have created over here. You need to manually create this because we cannot actually just import and then put it on that project folders itself. All right, so we have done on the number buttons. Not done yet. So number buttons, we have index.js. Select all, copy, and then paste again. The styles.js for number buttons. Okay, select all, copy, and then paste again. Okay. So on Snack Export itself, it is like your export CLI. You can run on web, you can run on Android device, you can run an iOS device, you can run on your device actually. So if you choose to run on your own device, you can actually scan the code over here. But of course, because some of us, we have some problem with our export client, okay, it still it shows the circles, the overlap circles, so we might not want to do that. You might want to actually load the Android device or the iOS device. Okay, but take note that the tap to play, okay, the problem with have to wait. Okay, if you have to wait, it's not shown is the button loading app.js. Oh, so it doesn't work in iOS. How about Android? Did I copy correctly? Okay, it runs in, it doesn't run in Android either. App.js, Number buttons. Yes. Number buttons. I have the number buttons over here. Yes. I have the number buttons over here. Number buttons. Let me look into my Visual Studio Code again. So if you've copied correctly, it should be actually able to start. Let me restart this again. This one I have also just copied from the codes that I have in my yeah, this one has no problem. What about iOS? Okay, let me tap to play. This one is totally unrelated to our node.js, yeah. Index typo. Oh, okay, I made a typo in my index. Let me see. Index.js. Okay, thank you very much to bring it up for me. Okay, so I have this saved as Lindex. Why can't I view the rename itself? Is this rename? Oh, this actually copied. How do I delete? Why is it not showing the full page itself? Okay. Okay, let me. The index have 2i. Oh, let me just create another index.js. Okay. Under index.js, let me just copy all. So the file naming is very important because we have put the folder itself, and then the imports, right, from the index itself. So when you select, okay, this snack export, okay, if we are trying to look into snack export itself, you don't even have to sign in to view the output, okay, through iOS or through Android itself. Okay, it will actually select the output for you. Okay, if you selected iOS, it will actually select the iOS device as an output for you, and then it will when you select Android, it will actually select that device to as an output for you. So when you use a snack export itself, the main problem with snack export is that if you have a lot of different components in your application, then you will need to know how to manage the packages in your, like, you have the node modules in your folder, right? So how you're going to configure that node modules folder over here. So using Snack Export itself, it can give a very quick fix for the output, but it might not be able to show, it might not be able for some of the extensive kind of configuration to be done over here. I copied already, can't run. Finally works. Finally works. Rename the folders. Okay. my Snack Export can't open the calculator to play, but phone can. Okay, all right. Anything that works, then it will be fine. But I'm not sure why Snack Export cannot. Snack Export, you will need to put Android or iOS. Sometimes it will ask you to wait, because when there are a lot of people using Snack Export itself, it will actually tell you that, oh, the device is on hold. So you need to wait for your turn in order for it to load into the calculator or the app that you have created. So now that we are on this same page, that we have all of these different ones that can't open at all. Okay. For API board, Export Snack still can't work. Okay. It's okay then. Later we'll look into that. Has a phone for you to test out on the right side, or is that a simulator? No. Now Snack Export itself on the right side here is the simulation that is provided by Snack Export itself. So because it is a simulation that's provided by them, simulation, we know that the simulation is quite a heavy kind of thing for a server to support, which is why sometimes it doesn't have enough kind of resources to provide for all the users, which is why you need to wait. Now, in order for you to actually run on the simulation itself, when you choose between Android and also iOS, all right, when you tap to play, okay, it has to load, all right, and this is where when a lot of us try to use the servers, then we need to queue up in order to use that simulation to simulate that device itself. Okay, so for us who are still basically not having any of the output even on Snack Export itself, okay, later I will come to you. We will go on to look into the scripts itself, okay, the basic scripts, not into the very deep down inside scripts, all right, or the coding itself. So we have Liang Han here saying that, so if we are doing it on Snack Export, that we're basically compiling the app on cloud. We are actually using the same concept as your Export CLI as well, because your Export CLI actually is using whichever functions or whichever libraries that you have on your physical folders to actually compile the app. Compile is like to translate and also build up the app and then project the output. Similarly, on Snack Export itself, it has its own libraries, all right? It has its readily prepared libraries on the web of Snack Export itself. So you don't have to initialize the project, right? So you are like using their folder instead of your own folder. Okay, so they have their awesome app folder that they are not awesome app folder. They have their general library over there, and then you can tap on with their general library. Which is why I say that if you have application, you have to build application that use more libraries than that. Then you will need to know how to configure on the libraries itself inside the package.json. All right, in which we will not touch on this. So in our physical, it is not to say that compiling app on cloud or on physical, you can put it in that way, but generally, I just want all of us to understand that it is the same concept that Export Snack and our own computers Export command line interface is using the same basic or fundamental way of packaging our scripts and then putting it into an output itself. Now, when we look into the scripts, let us look into the scripts first. Now, in the slide itself, we have mentioned about the dynamic components, right? We have different compartment that we have built in our app.js itself. And in app.js itself, when we look into the scripts, okay, we have basically import view and text, all right, from the React Native itself. So these are actually libraries. These are actually libraries that we borrow from React Native so that the view will look like what is provided by React Native for an application or an app to look like in a Android device or an iOS device itself. Now, when we look into external styles, the CSS that we put to further customize our own style of putting up the different component, remember the history view, the number buttons, the output itself, then we need to import externally, all right, using the file path. So this one we have learned before using our HTML files itself. So how do we actually state a file path? We can actually state it by the slashes. Now this dot itself, we are going to look into there. So the layout of our app.js itself, it is having the history view, the output view, and also the number buttons. Then we have the following view wrappers, which is called the container of history, which we shorten it, cont history, cont output, and cont buttons. So this was our initial view or plan, right? To have the history, to have the output, to have the number buttons compartment itself. Which the language of style in React Native is different from the web. I have the link of the style language documentation. React Native is a framework. Okay, now let us continue with this. Now, when we look into the part where you say render, right? Just now, some of us we say render, some of us we say text. All right, so that is the part where we can see all the markup language, all right, the text. But these tags, they are tapping on JavaScript language rule, which is you will see some of the passing of function over here. Okay, in Spy you have the HTML markup language kind of pattern. You have the direction or redirecting to any of the functions that might need to be done, okay, using this render of the whole container itself, in which it have the container of history, in which it have the container of the output, and in which it has the container of the buttons. So this actually give us the compartment. So when we look into view, the first view, view opening tag and the closing tag, this belongs to the container of history. All right. And this actually refers to history function, which will actually refer to the history view folder index.js. All right. And then the second view over here, the view opening tag and also the view closing tag. All right, this one is for the output. So whichever that we have seen on the output compartment, okay, it will actually refer to the style.js that we have actually already input inside here for the source, the source folder there, okay, the styles.js over there. Now, when we have the buttons, all right, the number buttons itself, we are actually creating another view. So it is the same concept as what we have on our HTML body, right? If you still remember that if I have one paragraph over here, I will open a P and then close the P, and this is one paragraph. And if I have another paragraph, then I will open a P and close the P. Then this is another paragraph. Same as to what we have in our render of the output of app.js over here. We have 3 views. All right, so it actually have the first compartment of view, which view the history, the second compartment of view, which view the output, the third compartment of view, which view the number buttons. So the view is like sort of display, that kind of thing. All right. So when we look into the basic Flex layout that we have for a screen, for an app screen, okay, it will actually have these as history output, this as the general output, and this as the number output, right? So using Flex itself, we actually can divide it into 3 containers. So looking back at our CSS script itself, we have something like display double colon block, right? So this is the same kind of display structure that we can call upon in React Native. We can use the Flex layout to break the whole container itself into 3 parts or 3 columns or 3 rows, that kind of thing. So when we look into the Flex itself, Flex equals to 1, that kind of thing, then you are actually using the Flex layout. Right. Then when we look into the number buttons component, okay, it actually use an array which contains all the buttons. Then we actually use the different numbers to stay on the buttons itself. Okay, on our app.js, when we look into the numbers itself, these are actually the what is being output on our buttons, right? But these buttons actually comes from the number buttons index.js itself. So here comes all the imports, all right, where all the different kind of spelling and also lowercase, uppercase, it has to match in order for it to refer, or in order for it to actually import correctly. So we with all of these files, let us look back into here. Okay, let's not overwhelm with all the import yet. Now, when we always when we use the number buttons itself, you can look into the should component update. All right, this is one of the readily provided function for us to always set the return of false to render the number buttons, so that the component will only render once. So when you actually click on the buttons, when you actually render the whole application itself, right, the number buttons, it will not always refresh itself. It will not always create a new button after we click, or it will not always create a new one or a new equals button, okay, once we click on that, because it will always refresh itself and recreate itself. So we utilize this component, this function itself, so that it will not recreate and recreate and recreate the button every time. All right, so you can take note at this why this one, okay, is set to always return as false. When we look into the history view component as well, okay, so this component itself, if we don't use the should component update as false, it will always update the history view. So we have to set it as false so that the history view will remain at there. So if you can actually play around with the app itself, you see that the history view actually keep what was entered over there in your history view itself. So in the container itself, it sends an array of characters, all right, to the number buttons, the array that is set over here, it is the array that you see over here. So any of the array, it actually is symbolized, or it is with these square brackets, then they are actually an array sent over. So whenever you see these kind of symbols, all right, the square brackets, don't be afraid. They are just arrays. That is, array is like you have a number of different data being sent forward. All right, it is not just one data, it is not just 1 0, it is not just sending one time of name, sending one time of email, but it is sent as a table. All right, it is residing in a table and sent over to the processing by the other script file. All right, so this one is what we call array itself. A little bit of overwhelming data over here, so a little bit of warning. Now, our container is supposed to send an array of data to the history view as well. So by entering all the different figures and then do some calculation, and then it actually output into the history view for us to view that, okay, we have done this calculation, this mathematical calculation before. So it is sent as an array over there as well to be output. And our container or our app.js, it should actually receive the user input character from number buttons component. So this is what our container should do. All right, our container is the whole container, the whole app.js itself. All right, now the next thing that the container can do is that it execute an action to clear history. So once we click on the clear history button, it should clear the history that was listed over there. So that's what the container can do as well. And it can actually validate and evaluate mathematical expressions. This is very important because it is a calculator app. It should be able to, when you put plus, it should be calculating with addition. When you put a division, it should be a division. It should not be a multiplication, that kind of thing. So the container needs to keep this correctly, and it have to keep track of the application state, which is when you click equals, it has to understand that, okay, the user have clicked equals, then I have to execute whichever that's entered as a mathematical calculation to be performed, and put the output in the general output and put it as a history view, put it in the history view itself. All right, so this is what is understood for the container to do. All right, so in the end, we can see that this output can be produced out of the scripting itself. So these are the concepts that I want all of us to bear. All right, not really to look into, oh, why this history is over here. Now, all of this, these dot state, okay, why I mentioned about it, the container have to keep the state. It has to, I am actually mentioning some of the things that you might find in the scripts itself, so that you can relate that, oh, this is actually keeping the state of your container itself. It is referring to the first one. The first function is the output, and then the next function is the math expression. Then the next function or the next task is that it will actually manage the state of history. So these are the few things that I need all of us to look into, not really into detail, because this workshop itself, it has no intention for us to be a pro React Native programmer or script writer. But this workshop is to just set the fundamentals clear on how you can actually structure out and manipulate some of the languages and see that you might be able to understand the very fundamentals on how you can build a JavaScript out of the general knowledge that you have known from the markup language, from the CSS, and also the JavaScript that you have seen thus far. So these are the when you see this kind of, so these are the extra knowledge here about the arrays and that kind of things. So when we see just now, we saw for I0, I equals to 0, and then I less than whichever numbers or whichever figures that we have fixed. Now we have seen a statement where there is a choice. All right, so in our f.js, it actually validates as well. So there is an if-else statement, then there is a choice. The following one is another kind of expression of a choice. So when we see if, then do this. If this is true, then do this. If not, okay, so which is else, then it will have another kind of choice statement that you will see over here. Now, this type of choice statement, it is like an if else, but it provides more choices in between. So you have different cases. All right, you have case buttons with this, and then you have case buttons with 0, 1. You have case buttons with 4, 2. So these are the kind of different choices that you want the computer to make. All right, if it falls under this different categories of direction that it need to choose. All right, so do not need to really understand what is inside, because I don't want you to be overwhelmed by what is inside itself. I just need all of us to see the structure, how the codes are arranged in a way, and what are the similarity that we can relate to with our basic knowledge of our tagging markup language, CSS, and also JavaScript to here. Now, when we look into this, these are actually similar to programming codes. Okay, so in your JavaScript file itself, in your JS file itself, you have similarly Java programming language kind of way of writing. And at the same time, when you scroll up to where we have the render over here, you seen back what you have in your markup language. All right, so this is why I need all of us to look into markup language at the first place as well, since some of us might not even have a general basic idea of what all of these are about. So the other things I might not actually really go into, unfortunately, because for this workshop itself, the objective, it is clearly for you to just understand the fundamentals on creating it, seeing the output, and I want all of us to really be to really understand the basic of it. Okay, why this come about, why this type of words come about. So on top of the language itself, okay, when you see this kind of imports, it is actually saying that you are importing libraries to interpret what you have actually scripted downwards in the later file. So if your file later actually use something that is like a view, that is like text, all right, it is not automatically understood even though you save it as JavaScript file. Now, before this, when we save it in .html, it is understood, right? When you use the certain text, okay, style, then it understood that it has to pick up the CSS book and then translate it as CSS. And then when you put as a script, then HTML will know that, okay, they have to pick up the JavaScript book and then translate in JavaScript language. Here in React Native itself, it is a little bit different. We need to import the books into our libraries. Why? Because they might not, there is no certain kind of distinguishing tags when you look into this file itself. It doesn't say that, oh, starting from here, you can just interpret this as markup language. Okay, starting from here, you can just interpret it as style CSS itself. No, everything is in JavaScript. Everything is saved in .js, and then it doesn't have any discriminating kind of instruction or word or terms over here to tell JavaScript that this is from which book. So what we do is that we tell it beforehand. We tell it to import this book over, because I know that you need this book to translate this line of codes. So whichever that is common in JavaScript, yes, it can run. But whichever that is not common in JavaScript, okay, for example, the view, the text, all right, it has to import some kind of book to actually interpret it or translate it. So, which is why you come across imports. All right. Now, when we look into styles.js, this is exactly similar with what we have done with our style tag, right? It is just that the very difference is this is in React Native itself, the first thing. The second thing, you need to export this. Now, before this, we have the style inside one file. We can actually put this inside the file of app.js as well, yes, but we do not want to mess up the app.js with so many things, because we have actually planned it to be in this container itself, in this different compartment itself. Then might as well we divide it very organized way in our file folder as well, so that we don't mess up everything inside our app.js and then confuse ourselves. Okay, what kind of styles that I want to import for this container again? So we don't have to ask that kind of question. We just put them into a very structured way, into a very organized way. You can do that in your HTML file as well. So it here for the style sheet, so we actually import, we need to import style sheet as well, so that React will know that, oh, this is translated with CSS language. So I'll look at these exports, all right? I will look at these scripts with the CSS book, all right, and then translate them with the CSS language itself. So when we look into here, it is the same as what we have in our CSS style in the HTML file itself. We still have the different categories. Then we have to have the double colon. Then we have to have the curly braces to state that this is the attribute. So remember the basic flex layout we have just now. So this is flex 1. It is declaring that our container, the home screen that we have, the app.js, the whole container is using flex layout itself. So some of us, we actually asked about, okay, React Native has a documentation that I want to refer to, because it is a little bit different from the JavaScript, the CSS, the the markup language that I have looked into before this. So I want to see the documentation. Yes, you may do so later. I will post up the link for you. So when we look into the CSS forms, we might see the similar kind of attributes, which are margin left, margin right, paddings, and we might have more attributes, because this is React Native. This is the mobile application side. So you have the flags instead of a block display, that kind of thing. So these are the only differences. Like, why is it called a React.js or React JavaScript? Because on top of JavaScript itself, it adds the rule of React Native on top, which is why you see that, oh, yes, it is same as JavaScript. It is JavaScript, but it is a little bit different from the JavaScript that I've known. So this is where you are going to face some of the difficulties to understand within 2 hours itself, because all of these different handlings of events, different if and else, the different basic of programming language statements, all of these things are actually to be learned in 2 years of courses. All right, as a student of a tertiary level or university level, you will need that. You will need that total time to actually help you to master this different programming codings, which is why I say that I won't actually want to overwhelm every one of us to go into the details of this, because these can only be done within the 2 years of the first 2 years of your software engineering course. All right, it cannot be at once crash course, everything just put inside to your brain. No, this won't happen. So which is why I want all of us to just grasp the very fundamental of it, the very basic of it. Then that would be the best thing that I can actually give you out of this workshop itself. So if you want the React navigation, React Native, React Native documentation, it's very simple. You can just put the React Native documentation, and then this is the React Native development documentation that you can find. So if you would like to find the sample codings, the samples, sample exercises, you can actually browse through here. So design itself, if you want to look into styles, okay, stylesheet.create. So this is where I say that you can still put, okay, the styles inside app.js itself. You don't need to separate them in a separate file in such a way, but you can put it inside and then declare the constant of styles, which equals to stylesheet.create. So this is one of the way you can put the styles inside your app.js. Now, when we look into this documentation, since there are questions, okay, there are actually questions before this to that is directed to upon your registration itself. Okay. Let us look back into the preliminary questions. Now, when we look into how to download and everything, the way that I've stated in the slide itself, that's the way on how to download all these different things. But if it doesn't work, so don't worry, you can actually use the export snack. This is an additional kind of things that I want all of us to know, which is you can actually generate your output right away on export snack itself. So if you face any problem with Node.js or export clients, which unfortunately I would say that this platform itself, it does have some of the problems of libraries. Some of it they cannot download due to some of the prerequisites on our computers that is clashing with its requirements and things like that. So for some of us, it might be a challenge, okay, for us to actually use this platform. But for some of us who can use it, okay, you can actually just continue to use that as your platform to venture to explore more on mobile application development itself or wireless application development itself. But what I can assure you is that React Native is most widely used kind of platforms, okay, even though it is a little bit problematic, but it is still the widely used platform that is developed by Facebook itself to develop, because it can actually develop for both iOS and also Android. So as you see in the export stack itself, it can actually generate two outputs for you. You can actually view it on iOS and you can actually view it on Android device itself. So you can actually compare, okay, what kind of view or output on iOS, you can actually see it on Android as well. And in the end, when you actually post up that application to Google Play Store, it will view as what you can see on your Snack Export or what you can see on your Export CLI itself. Now, when we look into the workshop itself, as what I've mentioned again and again, I need to remind all of us that this is gauging for new learner. Even though I don't know how effective it is, so make sure later you are going to put into the feedback form, and I appreciate that you give honest and also detailed kind of feedback in order for us to know whether this workshop actually helps you to learn as a new learner in HTML or JavaScript or any of the language that you have come thus far in the workshop itself, whether this workshop has helped you to understand the basic, to understand the fundamentals of what you can view HTML, what you can view JavaScript, what you can view from CSS as. All right, and when I look into criteria for a successful mobile application itself, if we are to look into mobile application nowadays, all right, we might know that there is no real great equation that we can find. All right. For instance, if we are to say that successful mobile application equals to a mobile application that have sophisticated UI, it has a good user interface that that user can relate to, can interact with without looking into the manual or help. They can straight understand what they are going to do with the application, that kind of thing. If any one of us have ever heard about mobile gaming, all right, if you look into the history of mobile gaming itself, at first, before mobile gaming actually come into the picture, when they first want to develop that mobile gaming software or application, actually the first app, right, you try to find the history, yeah? The first app itself, when they try to build, it was rejected by its own company. Why? Because they see it as a nuisance. How can you put games on mobile? Why would anyone buy on that? Why would anyone want to play games on their mobile phone? So this is the first question that the management ask, and this is the only argument that the management wants the programmer and the developer to stop their idea of putting games into mobile application. But nowadays, if I ask any of you, how many of us doesn't have games in our mobile phone? And most of us might have stuck on our mobile phones for games, right? So what does it determine to be successful? All right. So this is one of the questions that we have a very a golden question, we can call it, because it is really like a golden dollar question. If you can really answer this question correctly, then wow, you will not be at where you are. All right. So that kind of thing. So for this question itself, I would rather that to say that we try our best to do whatever we can as a developer, but to be a successful mobile application itself, of course, hopefully, all of us we hope we still draw our hope to be inclined to, so that our mobile application to be useful for the public, to be contributing for the community itself. All right, so that would be the goal that we want to see in our journey of development itself. Be it successful or not, we will see. We will look into, and if we are to say that, oh, mobile gaming is so successful nowadays, so what does it determine that it is successful? Is it because it is used by many people nowadays? Some of us, we say that we didn't even play games. So is it even successful? So that kind of thing. If you really know what I want to mean on here. Now, look at if I have questions about coding or about fixing, will there be people for me to ask? Okay, rather than now, I have been in industry for quite a while after my bachelor degree before I came into master degree itself. Basically, if you are asking this as a student or as a working adult, basically there are none. Very unfortunately to tell you that basically I do not have someone that I could ask for, but all right, you can actually receive much help on the internet nowadays since we have Mr. Google to ask for. Now, why I would say this, when you are a student, yes, we listen to our lecturer, we listen to our teachers very attentively. We try to we try to grasp as much as possible. But due to time limitation, just like today, we have to extend more. I'm so sorry for that. Okay, so we still have to extend more because now when we look into classes, when we look into lectures, when we look into practicals, when we look into labs, tutorials, we might realize that within that short time, we cannot actually receive that much of information. We still need to have our own exploratory sessions by ourselves. So when we have our own exploratory sessions, that is when we look into the internet, that is when we look into asking on any of the online platforms itself. Okay, some of us, we might look into Stack Overflow, for instance. So some of us, when we say that, okay, if I'm looking for help for Java, some of us might say that, okay, we will look into tutorialspoint.com. And some of us, when we say that, okay, I want help in HTML, where do I get that? Okay, or CSS or JavaScript. Then we might want to look into w3schools.com. So we have these different kind of platform that we can look for in our own self exploratory itself. So when we ask that, is there someone that we can actually look for, rather than someone, I would say that we can have many different platforms that we can actually look for instead of just someone. But of course, if okay, last time when we used to study, I have these kind of friends that we call them as god of programmers. Then any of the problems that we face in our programming itself, we would try to find these friends and then ask, hey, did you actually solve this? If you solve this, so how did you solve this? So that kind of thing, yes, you can have this kind of reference points that you can look to, but some way or other, when you come out to work, all right, you might not have that opportunity anymore. So in any point of your life, or at any point, okay, you might want to have these different platforms, as I mentioned, in the online area. Okay, not really a physical individual that you might be able to find to ask. So on more explanation for React.js itself, well, hopefully we can have a workshop on advanced, or not advanced, but really focus on React.js, because this workshop itself, as what I've said, it is for what I've understood is that the most participants is from primary school and secondary school. So I expect that you have no basic at all. I assume that all of us have no basic at all. No, we are a blank canvas. So I am putting all the different lines that I can on your blank canvas so that you can have a more understanding, not just focusing on how to crash course kind of just drag and drop and then put, yes, this is my mobile application, but I want all of us to have a general understanding on the very scripting side and also the coding itself, which is why more efforts were actually put into laying the foundation of what is markup language, what is CSS, what is JavaScript itself, and a little bit introductory on programming language, which is why I don't touch into the real deep React.js itself, because that would really overwhelm you. Just like just now, you have already mentioned to me, it's overload of information. So if I am to go into deep of React.js, that would actually throw you away from the workshop itself. Now, what are the other ways to, does it take to be good in using coding languages? This is one of the questions that I will have another question to ask, because based on this question itself, I am actually asking, is it that you want to ask whether there is any other languages that you can use, okay, or you are asking what are the best practices that you can make for coding, for your coding practices. So this will be one of the questions that I might want to have a further discussion if you want this to be addressed. So, okay, now if you have more questions, okay, I will open a time of 10 minutes. I'm sorry about the time extension because I think that after this we might not meet any one of us anyway. So I want to take this opportunity to give as much as possible so that those who have not actually come into any of the exposure of scripting, programming, you will not be overwhelmed or scared by the coding or scripting. You will at least know the basic, and then from there you can venture more on. All right. So those who says that I want to venture more on this, but I do not know how. I am still a primary student or I'm still a secondary student. No problem. You can come to Utah later and then learn about software engineering. Then you will actually be able to master all the different coding concepts or programming concepts later in your years of tertiary education itself in university or in college. So you don't need to push yourself such far. Okay, so for those who are already Utah students, I will welcome you to my class in your later years. So I'm one of the lecturer teaching wireless application development. So so you will see me for the React.js. So you do not need to push yourself to understand now, because as what I said, we cannot learn everything in wireless application development in such a short course itself, in such a short workshop itself. But of course, another time, I would say that I appreciate that all of us may give feedback, or all of us may give your suggestion if any of us have anything to comment about the different materials that is being shared over here. Okay, you can feedback on the feedback form itself. All right. So I've seen that there are no other questions asked. All right, we will look another minute. So if there is no more, then I might end this session of the wireless application workshop. Okay. Okay. Now it's 5:30 over now. So I believe that Miss Lee has already posted up our feedback form. So it would be good if you can give your honest feedback, okay, so that in future, if I'm going to give the same workshop again, then I can improve, all right, for the, especially for the ones that you do not have any of the ideas of anything about HTML, scripting, programming, this kind of things. Leave your feedback as honestly as possible so that I know where to actually improve and I know how to actually make it a more informative and more comprehensive kind of workshop for the future attendees or participants. So this will be a better kind of platform for the future participants itself. And at here, before I end, I think it would be good for another time that I would mention to all of us. There is a KLESF International Challenge 2020. So take note of this. You can actually join in on this challenge itself and visit our KLESF International Challenge 2020 website. Okay, you can actually take a scan on this QR code itself. Remember, the deadline of submission is 15 November. So it is like 2 weeks from now. So you can actually go and grasp something out of this. Okay, I believe that it is good. So you can look into the different categories. Okay, build your projects and then put it into the different categories itself. Again, you can see the assessment criteria. Yeah, so look at it and then try to make your project as close to the assessment criteria as possible for you to actually gain some points out of it. So looking forward to look at the submission from your KLESF International Challenge itself. Okay, do involve in this. You are going to appreciate that. You're going to gain something from that. So very big thank you for all of us again, okay, to stay with me. Some of us, you stay with me yesterday until 6 p.m. Wow, you extended yourself for another 1 hour. So and then now this day, today's session, you extended with me another 30 minutes. Really appreciate your presence with me. Really enjoy the journey of learning on the wireless application with you. Thank you for all the different interactions that you have on the chat box itself. Okay, I know that you're very considerate, which is why you didn't open up your mic, and then somehow there are some of the different voices that come out. So you share your thoughts on the chat box itself. Thank you very much. And for those who are in your primary school, secondary school, stay safe. I wish you all good luck, all the best for your study. All right. In hope that you will come. All right. For those who are in Utah, okay, stay where you are. Stay safe. Okay. You have already started on your October trimester, so do your best in your October trimester and try to take up and grasp all the different concepts that you can learn from your years and from your courses. For those who actually came to this workshop, that you are actually working already, you are administrator, you are researcher, you are manager. Okay, this is what I would like to encourage you. If you can actually master the basic of the markup language, the programming language, the scripting itself, you can actually further to go and look for this is wireless application development fundamentals workshop. You can actually go for beginner or intermediate workshop already, then you can actually look into how the things goes in React.js itself. All right, thank you everyone for coming. I think Miss Lee or Zisan, are you here, or you have anything to add on before we close this session?
Hi, Miss Loo. I'm
Yes.
here. Yeah. Thank you for the workshop today. Really very informative and very good exposure for us.
All right.
Okay. I have posted the feedback form link just now. Now I post again.
All right.
So hope the participants can give us some feedback so we can improve.
Okay. Right, so Miss Lee has just posted up the form again, so we can actually look into it. And if you have any questions regarding the KLESF International Challenge, you can actually contact the email that is stated over there, or even the phone number that's stated over there also. All right, so thank you very much. Can I message Miss on Teams? Okay. Yes, you may. And if there are some of it, because I am okay, I think I should stay for another 15 minutes for some of us, especially some of us who have mentioned that even Explore Snack also have problem. So if you have a problem, you have further questions, you can actually stay on. And for those who have done the project itself, okay, you may actually leave the workshop. So I declare that this workshop is already completed. Thank you very much for attending.
Thank you everyone for attending the workshop. So if you have any question, you may drop your message here for Miss Loo.
Okay, I will stop recording this session, yeah? So, okay, those who want to leave, you may leave, and then I'll be staying on for those who have further questions. Like Xiao Yan here, because you say that you want to see which procedure that you have done wrong. So, because you cannot actually launch the apps until now, right? Okay. All right. Okay. Now, if the red interface is here, all right, is this what you are seeing for Xiaoyan? And from AppHebot, right, and for MoonU, when we say that, oh, our Snack Expo cannot work, okay, is this what you all are seeing as well? Did you know the error message and things? So when we look into our Snack Expo, right, if any of us, you are keen to use Snack Expo instead of the React Native Expo CLI, you can use this, but you might need an advanced knowledge on when you would like to create different libraries. You need to configure different libraries for our Expo. But for this project itself, you do not need to oh, okay, like this. Okay, you do not need to have further configuration, which is why you can actually use the Expo snack. Now, if we have this as our output, right, we can actually, because this is web, All right, and when we look into React Native .touchable native feedback .selectable background, this is not actually available for web or for simulation on web itself. So which is why it has this problem. Even when we are using React Native itself, if we are to run in web browser, it will have this same error. So we need to switch it to a device. So you need to press on the Android, or you need to press on the iOS itself. Okay, you need to click on the Android or the iOS itself. So if you would like to see the output from here itself, you can tap to play, right, and wait for it to launch the app. But if you would like to put it on your own mobile, so you want to scan it with your Explore client, you may do so. You can actually just click on the My Device, all right, and it will project to you the QR code. Okay, for Appybot and also for Moonyu also, if you are listening to this, okay, try on this. So for Xiaoyan, you managed to get the output. Okay. It shows like this now. Okay, it's loading the image. It's loading the image, and let me see. The app.js, you need to rename it as app. Oh, you cannot rename it to app1.js because it will not read from app1.js. It is loading the app.js now. So you need to update your app.js codes not codes, sorry, the scripts, okay, into these scripts. You don't have to have app1.js having this script and then have the app.js having the general script, because this change code in the editor and watch it change on your phone, this is actually the general app.js welcome page. So you need to change the app.js into these scripts themselves. Copy from app1.js to app.js. Yes. Copy from app1.js to your app.js itself, and see whether it works. And okay, in your export, right? In your Stack export, right? Make sure you create this source folder. Okay, so after you have put the app1.js into app.js, you are still having the error because your app.js is supposed to link to the different files. So your different files are like this, having the source folder, then the source folder have two other folders, the history view and the number buttons. All right. And then both the history view and number buttons have index.js and styles.js. Index.js and styles.js. So you need to copy it in such a way like your Visual Studio Code. All right, that your export snack actually looks really like your Visual Studio Code itself. Import Src instead. Import Src. Okay. Yes, you can import then. Since it allows you to import. All right. So it allows to import. Yeah. So you do not need to copy and paste everything. Okay, you may let me know if you have the expose networking already after you have made the same type of project hierarchy. Couldn't launch. Oh, no. I'm not in a hurry. It's okay. It still couldn't launch because maybe some of the files still missing. All right, so just make sure that you have included the correct folder with the correct folder names. Okay, that is very important. So your history view, your H and V should be uppercase, your number buttons, your N and B should be uppercase, your buttons must be buttons, it cannot be button. This type of things you need to make sure that it is correct. Like index.js, it has to be spelled correctly. So yeah, just now I have one project that I misspelled the index.js, which caused the problem, and one of the participant actually reminded me. So these are the things that we need to make sure, because we have already have the working codes, so it only lies between the naming and also our project hierarchy itself. Inspect the document itself. Okay. Inspect the document itself. Okay. Now, okay, email the outcome later. All right, no problem then. Then I will have, since this is a recorded version or session itself, okay, I will have a final reminder on the check of the basic project hierarchy itself. So when we look into the naming conventions or the naming of the files, one of the things that we do not need to worry about is all the different codes over here. While I say that we do not need to worry because they are working anyway, but one thing that we can actually tap on from here is that in each of the files itself, it actually mentioned about where it is going to import from. So when we look into here, import number buttons from .source number buttons itself, actually referring to number buttons in source. All right, so you are actually importing number buttons from the index.js in number buttons, which is in source. So one of the things that we need to be careful when we actually code or when we actually script is that one of the very basic thing that I had been reminding, which is very important, is the project file. The file path itself, it has to be identical to our file path. So our file path says that it is from source, which is Src, which are all in lowercase. Then it has to be all in lowercase of Src. And then it mentions that it is from number buttons, which N and B is both upper letters, all the others lowercase, and then we have buttons. So very carefully, if we misspelled it with number button or number button everything in lowercase, then it will not work, because in our code itself we have put it in such. So if we want to change anything here, then we need to change the scripts as well, what we have stated in the script as well. So one way that is easier, because you have already the scripts, then you can actually just follow the scripts. So one thing that you can actually try to double check with your script itself is that, okay, if you happen to misspell something or things like that, it will have an error here saying that the file is not found, or the component is not found, or number buttons is not found, or history view is not found. So things like that, when this not found kind of errors come into the error over here, you will know that, oh, one of the file might be misspelled, or one of the components might be misspelled. So one thing that you can see is that, or one of the component might be misplaced. All right, so you can see and check back whether the project hierarchy is there or not. It is the same as what you have formed here or not. So like what we have in the slide itself, when I mentioned about the project hierarchy, why we want to have this project hierarchy itself, because we need to impose on our design itself. We need to know that, okay, at first we will have our homepage, app.js, home screen over there in the root path. And then we will have a source folder in the root path as well. And within the source folder, they have two folders, which is the history view and the number buttons. Within these two folders themselves, they will have both the same index.js and also styles.js. Then we will be good to go. Okay, by then the hierarchy is good to go. So remember about the outline, and then only then we go into the details. So at first, you will need to have the idea of setting or creating the folders first. So your app.js is there already, you do not need to create. So you need to create the source folder. After creating the source folder, you need to have the history view folder. You need to have the number buttons folder. So which is why this tool is under the source, which is going a plan for the apps itself. So when we have this, okay, good to go, then we need to ensure that we have these two files in each of the folders of history view and also number buttons. One is index.js, one is styles.js. By the naming itself, we understand that index stands for the screen itself. It is just like the index.html, right? So index is the history view screen. Index for number buttons is the number buttons container or compartment screen. So this is understandably reflecting over that. So what about the app.js styles? So if we would like to create the appearance that is customized to our preference, we can have a styles.js that is out from these two folders so that we can discriminate or we can distinguish that this styles.js has nothing to do with the container of history view or number buttons. So these styles can actually be referred to when we want to create the overall container of the home screen and also the output view or screen itself, because we have not, these two folders have not touched on the output view, right? So these styles is mostly creating the outward appearance on that. So when you have all these different namings and hierarchy created correctly, then you are good to go. It is like transferring what you have in the zip file that you have downloaded from the session 2 itself, that you have extracted out the the app.js and then the source folder. It is like transferring that into your Snack Export itself. Okay, so rather than you transfer that physical folder into your physical folder of awesome app, you are now transferring the folder into your virtual folder in the Snack Export itself. So if everything is identical, then yes, you are good to go. Just make sure that you have copied the correct scripts, all right, from index.js of history view and styles.js from history view, and then the index.js from number buttons and style.js from number buttons. Then the styles.js that is general for the output itself. All right. If you have done all this correctly, make sure it is not on web, because on web itself, some of the components of, when you read the React Native development or developer documentation itself, you will see that there are some of the components or elements or libraries in Expo and also React Native is not comprehensive to our web browser itself, which is why it will clash with the web browser itself, and which is why the web browser itself will not be able to produce any output. It will produce error because it clashes between the libraries, and the web cannot actually interpret what it is in there. So which is why you need to switch it to devices. So it is either you switch it to my device, or you switch it to iOS, or you switch it to Android. So when you device, very understandably, you need to use your own mobile phone device with the Expo client downloaded. So you need to have your Expo client. And then from your Expo client itself, when you launch it on your mobile, select the scan QR code and then scan the QR code that is right in front over here that's provided. It will be brought, the output will be brought to your own device. If you do not want to wait, because there are times that you need to wait for the simulation over here provided by the Expo Snack, because on iOS, Android itself, if it is used by other users, many users at that same point of time, then their server will have a limitation on all the simulations that can be done parallelly across the worldwide. So you will need to wait. So if you do not need to wait, like now, when I press RS itself, tap to play, then it the output just emerge directly. Then that's good for you then, because you can see the output right on your browser itself. You do not need to transfer here, transfer there, scan the QR code and things like that. The only disadvantage will be if there are many people who access the same Snack Export at the same time, then you will need to wait for the simulation to work. So that would be for Snack Export. But of course, another time I would like to give a closing comment over here before I stop the recording, before I stop the session, for the additional question over here. One thing that I would like to remind again, this is a simple calculator app which doesn't have second screen, third screen, fourth screen, or link to another database or link to the cloud or things like that. So it doesn't need to import any of the external libraries so that it can interpret or translate any of the external components. What if you have external components, external libraries to be imported? Now, importing in your app.js, in your index.js, in the JavaScript files, you can do the imports over here. And when you import it, you are actually taking from the libraries. Okay, so you have to make sure your library have that book that you want to import, that you want to borrow. The problem is how to make sure that export snack will have the book in the library, because in your React Native export CLI itself, you can import by installing the books into your library. Remember, when you have in your awesome app, what you have in your awesome app folder itself, when we talk about the node modules, right? The big term for some of us who do not understand what is programming and things like that. It is a big term even for some of us who understand programming, because now these node modules itself, it means I have a library, I have a certain books at there, but I don't have all the books that I can use. Because if we have all the books that we can use, this project folder itself might mean 1 to 2 GB in residing in your in your computer itself. Imagine if you have a few others project, it will really go crazy. So you do not want that to happen, which is why the library would always only contain a very limited and general books that it needs to for you to call out the books or take out the books and ask it to read or translate some of the components in your, or some of the elements in your codings or scriptings. But what if you need an external book to be borrowed from the libraries of, let's say, React Native? Then you can do it very easily with React Native CLI by installing that book. Okay, it is like borrowing the ebook and install into your node modules itself. Then you can have that, and then you can actually just import it over here. Just mention to the app, the React Native itself, okay, I'm going to import this book because I have it in my node modules already. So I am going to import this book. Whenever I mention this, you are going to take that book and then read from there to translate everything that I've put under this section that I've mentioned. But in Export Snack, we cannot actually install libraries over here. So what we do to configure external books to be borrowed into our Snack Export is within the package.json. this is where I said that if we are to do that, then we have to have external knowledge or advanced knowledge on what are the books, what are the book names. So you need to take the right book, right? The correct book with the correct title, so that it can actually take the right book to translate what you have for um, the external codings or external scriptings that you need it to translate. So you need to know the right book and book title and the book version. So which edition of which book? So this is where I say that if you are going to explore other application on Snack Expo itself, it might not be recommendable for you to use Snack Expo unless you have the extensive knowledge on how to configure this over here for external books, all right, or external libraries, if we are to say that in literally using the React Native knowledge. So this is the things that I need to mention about Snack Expo and also the React Native Expo CLI that we are using, the difference of them. So ultimately, I would recommend that you use back React Native if React Native can work for you on your computer itself. So this will be my concluding remarks. Okay, so thank you for all the different questions and additional questions that you have for me. I will officially close this session itself. Thank you for staying with me, and have a nice evening, everyone.